And staying with these moves against Antifa, joining me now is Rod Martin, a political analyst and founder, CEO of Martin Capital. Rod, can you first help just to explain who and or what Antifa is?
Antifa calls itself anti-fascist, but it takes that name and it takes its symbols, actually, from 1920s and 1930s Germany. The logos are identical. These were the equivalent of the Nazi brown shirts on the communist side of the divide that ultimately led to Hitler's rise to power. And they have self-consciously adopted all of that. They train rigorously. They talk about violence. They train for violence. They glory in violence. And we've seen them act violently now for years across this country, from seceding a section of the city of Portland as a free state for a period of time where they just ruled by terror, and the city government, led by Democrats, did literally nothing to stop them, to involvement in all of these riots we have seen, from the ICE riots in LA recently to all of the BLM riots in 2020. So this is a highly organized and incredibly well-financed terrorist organization. And it's not the first one in American history. Remember the Ku Klux Klan, remember the Weather Underground, remember, all these different groups, SDS, that have terrorized this country through the years, carried out bombings, killed people right and left. What they're trying to do is not smash fascism, it's smash free speech. And any speech that is abhorrent to them is met not with discussion, as Charlie Kirk was trying to do, but with violent force. That must stop. And that's actually the FBI's primary job as a counterintelligence organization.
Yeah, there's such a strange irony here. As you mentioned, the origins of Antifa was a Russian plant to try to undermine Hitler's efforts, but they were both for central planning. Somehow along the way, it shapeshifted to make capitalism the intended target. But what do you think their actual goal is, or do they just not have a goal and want to sow chaos?
Well, Stalin saw fascism as capitalist because it was slightly different from his version of socialism. But we know exactly what would have happened in Germany if the communists had won instead of the Nazis and their brown shirt army. We would have had what became East Germany for 40 years. And that was a tyranny equivalent to Hitler. The only reason that we think of it differently is they didn't start a world war. So that goal has not really changed. They are opposed to the existing system. They're clear as day about it. They see the Constitution as illegitimate and racist. They say they want to replace it, and they're creating violent situations to try to provoke a government overreaction so that they can start a revolution.
Now, we know the effectiveness of Trump getting to designate a terrorist group, as we've seen with the cartels and the very organized gangs. Who do you think is funding Antifa, and what are those people's goals?
Well, that's going to be quite an interesting investigation at the DOJ. Certainly people have talked about it being Soros or Reid Hoffman or, various other left-wing billionaires. We don't really know, but we do know that we can trace it. It's not that hard to do. We disrupted terror finance networks in Afghanistan and Syria. We can do it here. And the bigger point is that we have seen leading Democrat politicians fund the outcome of their violence now for years. Kamala Harris personally raised money online to raise bail for violent rioters in Minneapolis. And we've seen countless Democrats join into that. They are the de facto leaders of Antifa in the same way that they were the de facto leaders and frequently the actual leaders of the Ku Klux Klan. Nothing's really changed.
Rod, as you mentioned the origins of these types of movements, whether it's Stalin's or Hitler's, they kind of rely on the support of what they would refer to as the useful idiot. So I want, as we finish up, I'd really like you to explore what draws young people to Antifa. You see it in the culture with the music and some of the celebrating of figures like a Che Guevara. What draws young people to these type of extremist groups?
Well, it's extraordinarily important that your viewers understand the incredibly important thing you just said. Lenin classified people who were helpful to the party in three groups: the actual party members, the fellow travelers who are 100% with the party but pretending not to be so that they can infiltrate various institutions, and then what he called the useful idiots, the people who are sympathetic to the verbal language of the communist movement, but don't realize that they're actually helping communism along. A lot of young people are actually moving right now. That's part of why Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was having an incredible effect, moving especially Gen Z men toward Donald Trump and toward liberty. But the truth is, the young are always impressed with the idea that the system is against them and that it needs fundamental change. Usually, as they grow older, they outgrow that. And we see a shift as they have children and pets and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, the left has always found this a fertile ground to recruit. They have energy, they have idealism, they frequently don't have a lot of history, and they can be manipulated.
You bring up so many interesting points: children and pets, and Charlie Kirk actually advocating for people to start their relationships and their life partner earlier and not wait until later in life. So really bringing it home there. Really appreciate all this insight. Rod Martin, have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too.